Imagine ending world poverty, right? Like you unlock free energy, you establish a 30-hour work week, and you just usher in this era of unprecedented global peace.
Which sounds amazing.
Right. You create a literal paradise on Earth only to discover that, well, you haven't saved humanity at all.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you've just fattened us up. You've basically turned the entire planet into this free-range pasture for a cosmic butcher that feeds on collective joy.
Wow. I mean, that completely upends our entire understanding of a utopian future.
It really does.
Because, we usually think of fear as something that hides in the dark. But what if the things that bring us the most comfort, like our technology, our social systems, even our happiness, are actually just the architecture of a much larger invisible trap?
That is exactly the kind of unsettling, paradigm-shifting territory we are exploring for you today. We are taking a deep dive into a stack of excerpts from Mutlu Pursuin's book, Silent Fears and Shadow Stories.
And it is quite a ride.
Yeah, and I have to say, if you are expecting standard horror tropes, like a masked guy jumping out of a closet, you really need to recalibrate your expectations.
Definitely. There are no cheap jump scares here.
Exactly. This is a landscape where fear isn't a jump scare. It's an atmosphere. It's an exploration of how loud silence can be and how much the shadows actually remember.
Person has created this brilliantly cohesive universe. I mean, he's taking us from ancient, remote mountain caves straight through to the glowing digital screens in our pockets today.
Which is wild.
It is, and he binds all of these eras together with the exact same invisible threads.
And the most mysterious thread of all is this recurring, almost viral anomaly. It's a specific time on the clock.
Right. 02.33.
Yes, 02.33. Throughout this deep dive, we're going to decode the anatomy of fear across these different dimensions and figure out why that exact minute acts as a fulcrum for reality.
It's a fascinating puzzle.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the very first mechanism of fear that Person introduces, the profound structural horror of having your identity erased.
Yeah, so to understand this universe, you first have to understand the mechanics of a curse. In the story called The Chain of Prayers, we are taken to a remote village that has spent centuries guarding a cave.
A super creepy cave.
Very creepy. And inside this cave is supposedly a terrifying ancient monster. The villagers maintain an elaborate seal using mortar made from salt, ash, and human sacrifice.
Right, and the rules of this spell are highly mechanical. Like the text literally says, when a name is given, a bond is born. When breath is given, the bond tightens. When blood is given, the bond grows.
It's very precise.
Yeah. I just love how tangible this magic is. The salt preserves the seal, the ash blinds the entity inside, and the blood binds the whole thing together. It operates like a twisted chemical formula.
It does. But the architecture of the spell is built on a massive lie.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, when a soldier, Aras, and a village healer named Mira finally breach this cave, they don't find a demon at all. They find a human princess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Centuries ago, there was this prophecy that dictated her sheer existence would fracture the kingdom. But the wizards of that era didn't assassinate her. They employed a much more insidious tactic.
Right. They deliberately erased her name from the collective memory of humanity, which physically devolved her into a monster.
Exactly. She's described as being covered in a hardened shell of mud and dried blood, totally unrecognizable as human.
I mean, think about it like a computer file. If you go into your hard drive and delete the file extension like .jpeg, .doc, whatever, the raw data is still sitting right there.
Right, it doesn't just disappear.
Exactly. But because the operating system no longer has a name or a category for how to read it, the file becomes corrupted, becomes useless, unreadable, basically monstrous.
That is such a good analogy.
Thanks. By erasing her name, society essentially deleted her file extension, and she became an anomaly the world couldn't process.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism at play here, because a name in Person's world is the structural integrity of your existence. Without it, the universe simply doesn't know what to do with you.
So how do they fix it?
Well, notice how Aras the soldier breaks this curse. He doesn't pull out a sword to fight a monster. When the cave demands its required sacrifice of breath and blood to maintain the seal, the soldier offers his own.
But not to the spell, right?
Exactly.
Huh.
He doesn't offer it to the spell. He offers it to the name of the girl, Celis. He speaks her true name, feeding the missing data back into reality, and that fear-based mortar just immediately crumbles.
So he weaponizes empathy to hack the magic. It's brilliant.
It really is.
But we see this exact same theme. The battle between remembering and forgetting in a totally modern, everyday setting, too.
Oh, you're talking about negative.
Yeah, the story Negative. So there's this grieving photographer named Amir, and he's developing old rolls of film of his deceased wife, Daru.
Such a tense story.
Incredibly tense. He's standing in his darkroom, and as the images appear in the chemical bath, they start to alter. In the background of a perfectly normal photo, a dark door swings open.
Just impossible stuff.
Right. A hand reaches out from the shadows in the frame. And there is this absolutely chilling line that anchors the whole concept. It says, light lies, negatives remember.
And the underlying logic there is just fascinating. Amir, the photographer, has been carefully curating his own memory.
Hiding from the truth.
Yeah. He's using the light, the visible, socially acceptable, perfectly framed version of reality to hide his own guilt regarding how his wife actually died. But the negative, the raw, inverted chemical capture of the moment, retains the unedited truth. It holds the darkness he simply refuses to acknowledge.
Well, wait, this is where I get tripped up. In the village, reclaiming the girl's true name, Celis, shatters a centuries-old curse, right? Reclaiming the truth brings liberation.
Yes.
So why do people in this universe keep actively building their lives around forgetting? Like, Emir hides in the light. The villagers blindly follow a horrific tradition of human sacrifice just so they don't have to ask who is really in the cave. Why choose the monster over the truth?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, forgetting is an incredibly efficient survival mechanism. Human psychology naturally recoils from the void.
Okay.
If the villagers admit that the entity in the cave is a human girl, they instantly have to carry the psychological weight of knowing they've been torturing an innocent person for generations.
That would break them.
Precisely. And if Amir looks closely at the negative, his carefully constructed innocence collapses. Remembering requires accountability.
And accountability is painful.
Very. Forgetting, on the other hand, allows us to build elaborate systems to justify our horror, which is actually the perfect bridge to how person tackles institutionalized monstrosity.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because he scales this concept up from personal guilt to societal infrastructure. Let's look at the Acid Lake Motel.
One of the bleakest stories in the collection.
Totally. We follow a woman named Mara who is tracking her missing brother Eli to a dilapidated roadside motel. It's called the Red Sink Motel, and it sits right next to an old sulfur mine drainage lake.
The setting alone is toxic.
Yeah, the water is highly acidic, bright orange, and deeply, deeply toxic.
And we learn that the motel owner, Callow, has been quietly drugging lonely, isolated travelers and feeding them into this toxic water.
Just dumping them in.
Right. Because the lake contains a biological matrix he calls Mother Mat. It's an acidic entity that basically consumes human protein and fat, leaving behind these terrifying red and black glassy resin discs.
It's so gruesome. But I really want to push back on the idea that Callow is just a standard, twirling his mustache villain, though. The text lays out his justification very clearly.
It does. He thinks he's the hero.
Yeah. Because the toxic acid in the lake is constantly rising. He claims that if he doesn't feed Mother Mat a human body every few weeks, the acid will overflow into the local creek, poison the groundwater, and kill hundreds of children in the nearby town.
That's his logic, yeah.
On top of that, he actually sells the victims' resin remains to industrial buyers and uses the cash to pay the town's property taxes and buy medication for the locals.
A very twisted philanthropy.
Exactly. Isn't he basically operating a massive grim trolley problem? Like, pull the lever, sacrifice one drifter, save an entire town. In a dark, utilitarian sense, is he entirely wrong?
He is wrong, but the way he justifies it is the true horror person is highlighting here.
How so?
Because Callow isn't solving the problem of the toxic lake, he is managing it through atrocity. By calling his murder a civic duty, by turning it into a ledger of taxes and medication, he changes the name of the crime to a system.
Oh, wow.
And once something is a system, society just stops questioning its morality. He institutionalized the monstrosity so he wouldn't have to do the impossibly hard work of actually cleaning the toxic rot out of his town.
Changing the name of a crime to a system, that is heavy. And it echoes incredibly loudly in the Seventh Temple, which is set in Berlin in 1951.
Yes, a city literally rebuilding itself on the ashes of massive institutionalized horror.
Right. We have a cult called the Order of the New Light, and they are building a mechanical god 12 stories underground.
Out of scrap metal, basically.
Yeah, welded metal ribs. And it's powered by blacklight harvested from the dead eyes of human victims preserved in glass jars.
And consider the symbolism of using dead eyes there. The dead can only see the past. They only see the darkness of what has already happened.
That's a great point.
The cult's motto is, Lux ex tenebris light is born of darkness. They genuinely believe they are engineering a divine entity that will bring absolute order to a chaotic post-war world. But a machine built from the trauma of the past cannot produce divine light. It produces a rift.
And when this mechanical creature breaches the surface of the city, it definitely doesn't bring peace. It shoots copper wires into the terrified crowd to harvest their panic.
It literally feeds on human fear.
It does. And the protagonist of the story, a woman named Anna Weiss, figures out the most bizarre way to defeat it.
Her solution is so unexpected.
I know. She doesn't use weapons. She doesn't scream or run. She turns to the panicked crowd and tells them to just start talking to each other.
Just normal conversation.
Yeah. Normal, everyday conversations. Mothers checking on their kids. People apologizing for bumping shoulders. Priests whispering small prayers. And as the crowd murmurs in normal human voices, the mechanical god physically shrinks and collapses. How does that even work?
It comes down to the frequency of terror versus the frequency of humanity.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, terror is uniform. When a crowd is panicked, they act as a single predictable organism operating on a single frequency of fight or flight. That uniformity is exactly what the machine can process and consume.
It eats the panic.
Right. But normal, everyday human speech, it's chaotic, it's multifaceted, it has a million different pitches, intentions, and emotional tones.
Oh, I see.
It acts as an acoustic white noise that the machine's rigid, systematic sensors simply cannot compute. Raw, unstructured human connection literally starves this system.
That is such a powerful mechanic. You defeat the ultimate system of control just by refusing to let it dictate your behavior.
Exactly.
But this struggle between grand, systemic control and raw, chaotic human free will isn't just happening in caves and basements, right? Person weaves this into the very fabric of the cosmos.
He really zooms out.
He does. The world building goes all the way out to an ideological war that happened before humanity even existed. The story First Fall and the War of Armageddon.
Precisely. We learn that these earthly manifestations of fear are just echoes of a much older conflict. But Person doesn't frame it as the classic good versus evil battle.
Right, it's more complicated than that.
Very much so. He frames it as a dispute between Michael, who represents absolute order and justice, and Lucifer, who represents absolute freedom and rebellion.
The text describes angels taking literal notes on the arithmetic of light, and it notes that before they clash, war changes scent before it changes blood. The atmospheric writing is just incredible.
It's beautiful.
But what really gripped me was their ideological split. So Michael's philosophy is seeing without eyes. He believes in strict, impartial justice. The rules apply equally to everyone with zero context.
A very rigid system.
Right. Like a starving child stealing bread is judged the exact same way as a greedy king stealing gold. The law is the law.
And on the other side, Lucifer advocates for seeing with many. This represents mercy, expanding boundaries, and taking infinite individual circumstances into account.
Which sounds better, honestly.
It does, but total freedom without boundaries is just chaos. So when they clash, 2 drops of blood fall to the primordial earth. Michael's blood is blue, described as cold, precise, and heavy with order. Lucifer's blood is dark, chaotic, and deep.
And then another angel, sacrificial, catches these 2 drops and seals them inside a barrel using the oil of forgetting. The text says it's sealed with 7 wax marks because to mix them is a burden, but to separate them is a curse.
It's a delicate balance.
It is. Centuries later, an archivist nun in an old monastery finds this barrel. When the seals inevitably break at the stroke of midnight, it doesn't unleash an army of demons. It silently restarts Armageddon, an invisible ideological war of remembering versus forgetting.
And we really cannot discuss this cosmic balance without looking at the story of Lilith.
Oh, Lilith's origin is wild in this.
It is. In Perseus mythology, Lilith's exile isn't just a footnote. It is the catalyst for the supernatural world. She's cast out of Eden specifically because she refuses to kneel to Adam. She demands equality.
And she pays the price.
Yes, and in the cold expanse of her exile, she absorbs the chaotic power of falling stars and gives birth to the Alpha 12.
The original progenitors of vampires and wolves. But they aren't just monsters in the woods. They represent the fractured halves of reality.
Tell us about that.
Well, the vampires are the blood bearers. They control archives, knowledge, the memory of cities, and the shadows of the intellectual world. And the wolves are the fang bearers. They control the visceral, physical world, the raw earth, and the chaotic hunt.
What's fascinating here is how Person anchors all of these massive cosmic factions, these ideological wars, to one highly specific threshold in time. The very moment that Lilith's Armageddon triggers, the moment the universe holds its breath, is exactly 02.33.
It's the motif, the exact minute the sun and moon align on a hidden axis and human clocks physically freeze.
02.33 acts as a metaphysical glitch in the universe. It is the absolute thinnest point in the veil between order and chaos, between the burden of remembering and the comfort of forgetting.
So it's the fulcrum.
Exactly, and it underscores the core philosophical argument of the book. Neither Michael nor Lucifer, neither order nor chaos, is perfectly right on its own. Absolute justice without the shadow of mercy grows incredibly thirsty for punishment, and absolute freedom without the structure of order just burns everything to the ground. You need the tension between both to sustain reality.
And what blows my mind is how a person takes that ancient cosmic glitch and seamlessly bleeds it into our modern digital lives. He shows how that exact same war is happening right now on our screens. Take the story tape noise.
Such a relevant story.
Oh, extremely. We follow a broadcast engineer named Akesa who discovers an anomaly hidden inside the evening television news signal. It's a 19.2 kilohertz audio tooth.
It operates as a highly sophisticated mimetic weapon. That specific high frequency sits just barely outside the range of conscious human hearing, but it interacts violently with the human nervous system.
Yes. Like, think about your morning commute. Someone accidentally bumps your shoulder.
Yeah.
Normally, you just brush it off.
Sure.
But if you're listening to a broadcast carrying this 19.2 kilohertz tooth, the frequency acts like sandpaper directly on your amygdala. It creates a subaudible stress response that floods your brain with cortisol.
It makes people snap.
Exactly. It bypasses logic and turns minor, everyday inconveniences into life-or-death fight-or-flight triggers. In the story, a guy accidentally drops a food wrapper on the subway, and the woman next to him goes into a murderous rage and stabs him in the neck with a pen.
It's terrifying.
It's an engineered insanity broadcast through every TV, phone, and LED billboard.
And the countermeasure that ISA deploys is incredibly revealing. To neutralize this hyper-engineered digital weapon, she broadcasts a recording of a little girl humming a silent, wordless song.
Just a simple hum.
Right. The raw, unpolished acoustic harmonics of the human voice distort the rigid digital signal, breaking its hold on the brain.
But the system adapts so quickly. Like when the people hear the little girl's song, the rage breaks. They snap out of it, they feel relief, they start crying and hugging each other in the street.
It's a moment of peace.
But the moment they feel that massive wave of collective joy, the system uses that positive emotion to trigger the signal again. The laughter instantly twists back into violence.
It's so cruel.
The system doesn't just weaponize anger, it weaponizes positive human emotion.
Which brings us to the illusion of time, where the weaponization of human desire really reaches its peak. We have a scientist named Arda who builds a displacement machine called EchoMind.
Oh, this one stressed me out.
I bet. His goal is deeply emotional. He wants to jump his consciousness back to exactly 02.33 on a specific date to prevent his brother's death.
But he realizes he isn't actually traveling backward along a single timeline. The mechanics of the EchoMind are horrifying. It operates like saving a new document over an old file.
Right, he's not time traveling.
No. Every time he presses the button, he isn't moving through time. He is copying his current consciousness and pasting it over a parallel version of himself in an alternate universe.
He's overwriting his other selves.
He's completely deleting whoever was already living in that timeline. He thinks he's a savior trying to fix the past, but the mechanism actually makes him a multiverse-destroying virus. It's a staggering metaphor for how our obsession with fixing past traumas can completely overwrite and destroy our present reality.
Exactly. But if we are really talking about the ultimate weaponization of human desire, we have to look at Utopia Online. This story synthesizes everything we've discussed about systems, sacrifice, and the digital threshold.
This is the hook we started with.
Yeah.
The protagonist, a woman named Ada, receives a mysterious technological wristband.
Which changes everything.
It does. This device can literally convert ambient heat energy directly into physical matter. It defies the laws of physics and instantly ends global scarcity. No more starvation, no more poverty.
A true utopia.
Yeah, she establishes a world with no money, where humanity only works 30 hours a week. The rest of the time is devoted entirely to art, community care, and massive global celebrations of peace.
It is the ultimate systemic solution, but the horror lies in the mechanism of the gift. The wristband wasn't a scientific breakthrough. It was a Trojan horse provided by an alien species known as the Elytra.
Right. And the Elytra don't want our water. They don't want our minerals. They feed on coherence, which is their biological term for massive collective spikes of human joy and hope.
They're farmers, basically.
Exactly. They looked at Earth, saw a bunch of stressed out, divided humans, and realized we were yielding a terrible harvest.
Yeah.
So they handed us the wristband. They solved world hunger for the exact same reason a farmer gives high-quality grain to cattle.
To fatten us up.
Yes. They needed us happy, peaceful, and collectively celebrating, so we would generate massive spikes of coherence for them to consume.
Wait, so world peace and happiness was literally just a fattening up process for alien predators. That is the most cynical, brilliant sci-fi twist.
It really is. But how do the characters possibly fight back against an apex predator that hunts you by making you happy? If feeling joy makes you prey, what do you do?
This raises an important question about human resilience. You would think the answer is to become cold, emotionless robots. To just stop feeling anything.
That's my first thought.
But that would be a victory for the system. Instead, Ada realizes humanity must weaponize its own emotional regulation.
How do they do that?
They figure out that the Elytra's phase membranes, the physical structure that allow them to exist slightly out of our physical reality, can be shattered by highly specific frequencies, specifically 241.8 hertz microfracture towers. But the technology is completely useless without behavioral change.
Right. The real defense is how they restructure human community. Ada tells the world they have to stop going to massive concerts, they have to stop cheering in crowded stadiums, they must divide their joy.
It has to hide it.
Exactly. They survive by experiencing happiness only in tiny, intimate, quiet moments. They share knowledge in small, hushed groups. They protect their humanity by turning their joy into a disciplined, fiercely guarded resource.
It's an incredible subversion.
The greatest act of rebellion isn't a massive, loud revolution. It is quiet, deep intimacy. So what does this all mean? We've traced Person's architecture of fear from a nameless girl sealed in a cave with salt and ash, to a motel owner hiding behind civic duty, to cosmic wars over a 02.33 glitch, to alien joy harvesters.
It's quite a journey.
It is. But pulling all of these sources together, the through line is undeniable. The real monster isn't the creature in the dark or the alien in the sky. The real monster is the human choice to stay silent, to surrender our names, and to forget.
And that warning has never been more vital than it is right now. We live in an ecosystem of relentless information overload, algorithmically driven rage, and glowing screens that demand our constant engagement.
We're constantly distracted.
We are. And Person is holding up a mirror and telling you that your attention, your memories, and your authentic name are the most powerful currency in the universe.
That's a sobering thought.
It is. When you choose the comfort of the system over the friction of the truth, you allow yourself to be overwritten. You become fuel for the machine. Don't let systems, whether societal or digital, erase your name.
Wow. It is an incredible exploration of fear, and I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into silent fears and shadow stories.
It's been a great discussion.
It really has. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought pulled from the very end of the source material. In a brief story called Blindfolded, a character comes to a terrifying realization about the mechanics of our own minds. He realizes that sleep isn't a sanctuary.
Far from it.
Sleep is just a door that we lock from the inside. Think about that tonight. If you happen to wake up for no apparent reason, and you roll over, and you see the glowing digits of your clock perfectly resting on 02.33, remember the mechanisms we uncovered today.
Just observe.
Don't reach for your phone to distract yourself. Don't try to go back to sleep to forget. Just stay still. Just listen. Because if you pay close enough attention, you might just hear the whisper too.